We always like on Locked On Wolverines to bring on someone who knows a little bit more about the intricate details about how the team is performing, individual players, how they maybe projected the NFL, the real experts, and that is PFF. And so today we are going to bring in for the second, I think it's the second time, it's been a long time, Max Chadwick from PFF on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Holt, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Over there to my other side, there is Max Chadwick from PFF. Welcome back onto the show. I almost negated to say that you are the PFF college football analyst and co-host of the PFF College Football Show. So welcome back. Glad to have you, man.
Absolutely, dude. I think the last time I went on was before the season, and I actually correctly predicted Michigan to win it all. And I'm happy. I'm happy it turned out right for both of us, honestly.
You weren't supposed to sing your own praises because the literal first thing that was going to be out of my mouth after that initial intro was take a deep, long bow.
I wanted to make sure you didn't forget, man. Yeah.
It was this time last year, too. It was like post-spring. It was sometime in like the spring, summer. It wasn't even like coming out of fall camp. It wasn't like right before the season or anything like that. Like you were like, that is my pick to win the national championship. It's going to be Michigan, which I know is tough for as a Penn State guy.
Oh, dude, it was brutal. Yeah,
but
it was tough.
Could be worse. You could have been an Ohio State guy to make that prediction. But
that's true. Yeah, that is true. But yeah, as I was watching the Penn State game, it was a close game. And there's part of me, obviously, the majority of me was rooting for Penn State. But also there's part of me, I was like, all right, if they lose this game, at least my prediction still looks good. So yeah, I've been wrong on a lot of stuff. I'm not going to say like I've been right on everything. But that was, I remember when I said that prediction to you, I was looking at the betting odds, and they were like 6th in betting odds to win it all. And I was like, that makes no sense to me, considering how good that team is. And yeah, they proved it, man. 15-0, won the Natty. They were dominant all year. I mean, yeah, that was, I felt good getting that one right. At least I also picked USC to make the playoff, which did not look good as a 7-5 team, but the Michigan one did look pretty good. So I was happy about that.
Well, see, I was reliably told by Buckeye 49326 that the only reason why Michigan won anything in the last 3 years is because of cheating.
Oh, right. That must have been it.
Yeah, that's that. No good players on that team, which is why the NFL is looking at the players who are in the draft and sitting there and saying, well, we're not going to take any of these guys. You all were cheaters, and therefore we'll get to the NFL draft here in a moment. But I want to kind of get your thoughts on the new era of Michigan. Michigan just had its spring game. Obviously, it's a new head coach in Sharon Moore. I don't know if you were able to catch the spring game. I'm assuming you did. But there was some kind of like question. Will this look a lot different? Will this look exactly the same? We all thought it was going to look the same. Then we had players like McCarthy coming out and being like, oh, the defense looks completely different. To me, I mean, honestly, everything looked pretty much identical, but you've got a keener eye than I do. What kind of did you see from what, any differences from last year to this year when it comes to Michigan?
Yeah, obviously, they're going to have a brand new team, honestly, not only even new head coach, but new defensive coordinator as well. Justin Minter following Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the defense does look a little bit different. Obviously, I still think it'll be really good because I'm really confident in how they have so many talented players coming back. I think a lot of people are kind of expecting this big drop off from Michigan. I think there are some positions where you can expect that. But I think defensively, they got talent everywhere on that defense. So I think it'll still be one of the best defenses in America. My big thing was obviously looking at the quarterback situation, because I think that's the biggest question for them heading into the year. And really who will be the starter at quarterback. I don't love all the options they have right now. I'm curious to see what Jaden Davis looks like as a true freshman. I don't think he'll really be competing for that job immediately, though. I'm expecting Alex Orji to be the guy. But again, he's kind of an unknown as a passer. He's more of a guy that has been put in to be kind of like a wildcat quarterback for them last year. So it really is just a big question mark at quarterback. But I think they still have a lot of talent at a lot of other positions. But quarterback, offensive line, those are the two spots I'm really looking at that it's going to be completely brand new. And we'll see how they do next year with basically a brand new offensive line, new weapons, and a brand new quarterback too. It's going to be an interesting passing game for sure for Michigan next year.
Well, there's a lot of guys that are always on your list of like the best returning X, the best returning whatever. Like you said, a lot of people expect a big Michigan drop off, but there's a couple guys that like, you guys have Mason Graham as being like, if he could be in the draft right now, he'd be the top defensive tackle.
Yeah.
You have Kenneth Grant as like the seventh best returning defensive tackle. And those two play next to each other. You got Will Johnson on that list. Donovan Edwards is a guy that maybe had a fall off last year, but was a part of your off-season podcast just to kind of highlight him as one of the top running backs in the country. With all of that returning, like I know we just talked about the quarterback and you mentioned the offensive line. Obviously, receivers are a concern for me, but how much of a difficulty would it be for Michigan to find itself in a similar place as it was last year, or is it possible with the pieces that they do have?
I'm struggled to say 15-0 is in the cards again. I think that obviously with the new playoff it'd be even more than that. But I think I struggle. I think they're a top 10 team in college football. I struggle to say much more than that just because it's such a huge question mark at quarterback, again, O-line, receivers, and that's a really important part. I have a lot of trust in Sharon Moore, but if they still had Jim Harbaugh there, obviously I feel a lot better about it. But yeah, I think what will keep them still as one of the best teams in college football, one of the 10 best teams probably, is that defense and how elite it's still going to be with the defensive line. I mentioned Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Both might be first-round picks next year, honestly. And it's crazy that, you lose Chris Jenkins, who's going to be a top 50 pick, and you still return two unbelievable defensive tackles and those two. And then you mentioned, so they got some other guys, Josiah Stewart. I'm a huge fan of as well, edge defender. I love Jayshawn Borum, dude. That transfer coming in from Maryland, I think he's one of the best linebackers in college football. I think that was a huge pickup that not a lot of people are talking about right now. But after losing Michael Barrett, after losing Junior Colson, that's a big-time get for Michigan. And that keeps me from saying the linebacking core is something that I'm worried about because I think he's a really, really good player. And then obviously the secondary. Now, Rod Morris torn ACL is a huge blow and hopefully can get back at some point in the season. But you still got Will Johnson, who's the best corner in America, and I think would be CB1 in this draft if he was eligible for it. McCarthy Page, I think, is also really, really good safety as well. So they got the D-line is unbelievable. Like I said, Barham's a really good linebacker to hold down the middle of the defense, and then you got the best corner in America and Will Johnson as well. So that defense, I think, obviously lost some key pieces, but I still think it'll be one of the best defenses in America next year. I think that'll kind of keep Michigan afloat as one of the 10 or 15 best teams in the country.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the offensive side of the ball, if we can do that. But we're going to do that here in just a moment. Before we do that, listen, there's all kinds of events. We're in the middle of actually like one of the kind of premier times in sports, right? You've got NBA playoffs. You've got the NHL playoffs. You got Major League Baseball has just started. You got concerts starting to come. Places like, if you're in Michigan, places like Pine Knob are going to be reopening soon. The best way to get in the door for any of those things is through Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which helps getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch or to your event. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets. From the seat views to just the fact that even we went on to Gametime during the NFL playoffs, and we found that you could get in the door and actually get a seat, not standing room only, at a Detroit Lions home playoff game. Everyone was saying, oh, the tickets are like $1,200, $1,000 to get in. We found them on Gametime for $400. And it was just a couple days before the game. That's how good it is. So from the seat views to the all-in pricing, lowest price guarantee, where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. All kinds of great things to enjoy about this app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're going to continue on in just a moment, but it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. I'll tell you what, if you really want to be able to figure out how to handle all of that, PFF, when it comes to football, that'll help you out. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on anything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we are still here with Max Chadwick from PFF. Definitely make sure you check out the PFF College Football Podcast. Super amazing stuff over there. I mean, my problem with PFF is I don't know how. I need someone to sit me down and give me a better tutorial, because I feel like sometimes I find myself going down rabbit holes, and then and then I'm like, I don't know even what I'm looking at, and I don't remember to get back to where I'm at. But it's like, it's almost like information overload. We love to use PFF on this show. But I will confuse myself in the process of going on these deep dives. We do that way more during the season than we do the off season, because, it's not like we're doing spring game PFF grades, but
right. Thankfully not. Yeah. That'd be a lot for our guys to do, honestly, but yeah.
but nonetheless, it's my go-to when it comes to advanced analytics, and has been for multiple years. And as you said earlier, you were the one who predicted Michigan to win the national championship back. I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure it was like March, April last year. If Michigan is to do anything resembling what it did last year, like you just talked at length about the defense, what are the known commodities to you on offense for Michigan entering this next year?
I think it starts with Colston Loveland, who I think is pretty easily the best tight end in college football. I don't even think it's close, honestly. I think he would be the second best tight end in this draft behind Brock Bowers, and the only reason why he's not number one is because Brock Bowers is the greatest tight end we've ever seen in college football, and maybe the best tight end we've ever seen in the NFL draft as well. So Colston Loveland, though, I think he's going to be a first-round pick next year. Honestly, Dalton and I are going to do a way too early 2025 mock draft immediately after the draft this weekend, so keep you on the lookout for that. And there will be multiple Michigan players, Mason Graham for sure, Will Johnson for sure, obviously, Kenneth Grant most likely, and then also Colston Loveland I think will also get in there as well. So there's going to be a lot of Michigan players. I think Colston Loveland, I mean, his athleticism, dude, is crazy for a tight end that big. He is a matchup nightmare for defenses, and I think Sharon Moore would be wise. I know with all the new receivers that they lost and all the guys that they lost, like losing Roman Wilson, losing Cornelius Johnson, I think it'd be wise to have Colston Loveland being like your top guy next year as your go-to receiver. And I think he'd be a phenomenal player. And obviously you want to get some more play out of your receivers too, but I think Colston Loveland, he could be the top guy. And then Donovan Edwards too. I mean, I know I didn't have him in my top 10 running backs list. I think I put him as the honorable mention actually, just because like you mentioned, he had a down year this past year, but I mean, he was electric the year before and he was fantastic. And I think, and one of my favorite interviews I've ever done, unbelievable kid, hilarious kid, honestly, great character. I know his teammates absolutely adore him. I am so excited to see him finally out of Blake Corum's shadow and be the number one guy this year. That actually was something I talked to him about. I was like, listen, man, when Blake announced he was coming back to school on the Rich Eisen show, how would you feel? And he was like, dude, I was pissed, man. I was like, oh my God. I was happy for our team. He was like, oh, it's a great player. It's coming back. But also I was like, oh, another year. I gotta sit behind this guy. But obviously he was joking about that. But now, of course, he now can be the number one guy. So I think Michigan's offense, I know Harbaugh is gone, but it'll still be old school, old fashioned football. They're going to run with Donovan Edwards a lot. And then I also think they're going to use a tight end up the seam a lot with Colston Loveland. I think that's going to be a lot of Michigan's offense next year. And I think they'd be wise to rely on Edwards and Colston Loveland to carry that offense next year.
Certainly, if I'm Michigan, I'm trying to utilize Edwards in the passing game as well, because that was like the thing of him coming out of high school. All this talk about how he's probably the best receiver Michigan had on the team, just straight away coming in as a freshman, and then he just doesn't really get utilized. I think in large part because it early on in year two, he went out for that pass against Hawaii, got injured. So I think that they kind of shied away, but I think that would be a good way to kind of utilize both and kind of get away from the the fact that they don't have a ton of receivers, but they do have a couple guys, certainly. I'm just curious of your thoughts. We haven't really seen Fred Moore much, but we have seen Tyler Morris. We have seen Samaj Morgan. What are your just general thoughts on those guys? I know we're getting into the real niche, so if you don't have like anything very specific, I wouldn't blame you. But nonetheless, do you have thoughts on like what these guys are capable of, or what you've seen so far out of those two?
Yeah, obviously we haven't seen much out of them so far. I think from what I've seen from Tyler Morris, at least, I think he's done a really good job of separating, and I think he's a good separator, and I think he's done a good job of finding soft spots in zone coverage as well. So I'm excited to see what he can do as kind of like a full-time receiver for Michigan next year. Like you said, it is tough kind of projecting these guys when Michigan lost so many talented players that it's like, okay, it's hard to look at the guys coming in and that haven't played much and haven't been relied on and be like, oh, this is what I expect from them next year. But yeah, I think they definitely have definitely some good traits. I think Tyler Morris will probably be play that Z role in that offense next year. I think Fred Moore will probably be the X receiver, and then probably Samaj Morgan in the slot if I had to predict right now. But yeah, I think they definitely have potential, but it's just a lot of projection for basically the entire Michigan team right now. I mean, that's what happens in I believe they set the record for most combine invites, and they might even set the record for most NFL draft picks as well. I mean, with how many guys that get drafted, and that just shows like how great the team was last year, but also how much they have to replace in 2024 as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of new faces and probably some guys that really step up to the plate and make names for themselves. But as of right now, it's a lot of projection for basically the entire offense and entire receiving core too.
That's kind of wild too when you think about the fact that like you've mentioned four guys that are very likely to be first round picks next year, which I would imagine would probably be up at, if not the most, like at worst the second most of any school. And yeah. I just always think here, like a lot of analysts across the country always say like, oh, the reason why I picked this team as the eventual national champion is because they are projected to have the most first round draft picks. So Michigan's at least in a good spot if it does have four guys that could go in the top of the draft next year. I want to, before we get to NFL draft stuff, I want to backtrack. We just went to go back to the defense slightly, because you talked a lot about Jayshawn Borum, and he's a guy that when I've talked to people behind the scenes in Ann Arbor, they have been starting to look at Jayshawn Borum as like, this guy might also be a potential first round draft pick. Like they think the world of him. Like they just feel like they struck gold. What do you see out of him? And are they far off? Is that kind of an accurate assessment? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think they're really smart by saying that. I think he is by far, I could not believe the lack of attention that he got when he got in the transfer portal. I mean, there were like people like, oh yeah, he entered the portal. And I was like, this is a top 5 linebacker in the country. And granted, the linebacker position in college football, as it is in the NFL too, is weak. It's because of how difficult a position it is to play, because you got to be able to defend the run, you got to be able to rush the passer, and you got to be able to play really well in coverage. So if you can't do any of those things, or you can only do 2 of those things, you can be a liability for a defense. Borum is an interesting case study because as a true freshman, he was fantastic at Maryland. He actually had an 83.1 coverage grade. I believe that was like top 5, top 10 in the country, and 78.5 overall grade. This past year went down to a 66.2 overall grade and a 44.7 coverage grade. But what I want to caution people by looking at that, he kind of battled through injuries the entire year. So I'm not saying you could throw away that tape, and he's obviously got to bounce back from that. But he was playing hurt a lot of the year. So I think what he showed as a true freshman is probably more of what I would expect from him. And he's a really good coverage player. I think, like I said, I think he's a great replacement for Junior Colson and Michael Barrett. Now, he won't completely make up for those 2 losses, because I think Colson's going to be a day 2 pick, and I think Michael Barrett can be selected somewhere on day 3. So I think he is definitely a guy, though, that I'm excited to see what he can do in that defense next year. And yeah, like you said, I think he's probably a top 5. I think I had him as a top 5 linebacker in the country entering the year. And I think that, like I said, I think he's one of the most underrated players in college football right now. And one of the most underrated transfers for sure. And I think he's going to be a guy that surprises a lot of people on Michigan's defense next year.
And I think one of the things that really probably helps him out is he is leaving. Now, I don't know a ton about the Maryland defense, but I also can say with a lot of certainty, especially with Wink Martindale getting the charge in Ann Arbor, he's going to a system that is very specifically like, hey, we want you to be the star of the show. Yes. We're going to highlight you. Wink is a linebacker guru. They've got lots of guys that love to work with linebackers. from back to front, right? Like, that's a great thing about having all of these defensive coordinator types on the coaching staff. We're going to continue on, and let's finally kind of dig into the NFL draft, and because obviously that starts in 2 days, which is kind of wild to me. Let's get some of your thoughts, especially because I saw a graphic from PFF about the underrated guys in the NFL draft. That's what I really want to pick your brain on, as well as the JJ McCarthy of it all. Let's get to that here in just a moment. Before we do that, and of course, I do not have my screen ready to go. There we go. Listen, I'm told that I am a competitive person. Whether you believe that's true or not, I do have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It has been taking the app world, the internet, whatever you want to say, by storm. Downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play not on just one board, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations. You're building up amazing cities and you get big money. But the best part of that is messing with my friends, because you can completely subterfuge, and guess what, you can even play with them as well, play alongside of them depending on where you want to go. But if you want to tear them down, you can charge them rent on your iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. You can also get involved in a heist and take all their riches, all their value. And then also with the leaderboards, you can find out who the real successor in Monopoly is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with those friends, like I said, all around the world, not just locally, in time tournaments, earn huge rewards. So get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, we are going to finish up here with Max Chadwick, which I appreciate you spending the whole show with us. And you're just a wealth of knowledge. People were very, very happy last year when we had you on. But of course, you
I still they're going to win the national championship. So I hope they'd be happy with me.
So unlike that jerk Trevor Sikkema, who also, I know he predicted Michigan to win the national.
He did. He got that right too. Yeah, both of us got it right. Yeah, it was great.
So what I'm going to need from you now is you to, I know you just said you're not predicting 15-0, but 15-1 I think is fair, so
maybe, yeah.
As long as that one isn't against Ohio State, I think Michigan fans would be very happy with that.
Yeah.
Let's turn our attention to the NFL draft. Obviously kind of the talk of the draft ever since, I would say, like late January has been JJ McCarthy. And I feel like there is a dichotomy that's happens with the discourse around McCarthy, because if you're a Michigan fan, and I feel like a lot of the people who have watched McCarthy kind of intently, they are much higher than the people who were kind of late to the evaluation game or just going off of name recognition. Obviously, you're more in I would assume you're more in the former camp, but what are your thoughts about JJ entering the draft? Because to me, it's crazy that people are like, he's not even a first rounder and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
No, I completely disagree with that as well. I know I'm in the good graces of your fan base right now for saying you're going to win it all. I might ruin that right here, but I like JJ a lot. I'm a little bit worried about trading up for multiple first round picks into the top 5 for him. And I keep saying this over and over again. The issue isn't quality with him. The quality is always been there. He's always shown that he's got the capability of being a franchise quarterback. The issue with him is the quantity. And, I mentioned before, I'm a Penn State fan. That Penn State game comes to mind where it was like he only threw the ball 8 times, 0 times in the second half. And that was a close game, the whole game, maybe closer than I'm probably, imagining it closer than it actually was as a Penn State fan. But I understand like they were able to run the ball, and that's why they did that so much. But it's just the other guys in this class, like Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels, they kind of carry their offenses. JJ, not saying he can't do it, he just wasn't asked to do it. So for me to say, oh, I'm going to ask you to do that in the NFL when he hasn't shown that he can do it yet, that is a little bit worrying to me. So I think I would take him 4th out of the quarterbacks in this draft, but I put him more in the tier of Penix and Nix than I would in the Drake May, Jaden Daniels tier. I think I would take JJ somewhere in the middle of the first round probably, and trading up into the top 5 for him is something that I'm a little weary of right now. Now, again, he's got the capabilities to be a franchise quarterback, and I think he's certainly got all the talent in the world, and he's an unbelievable leader from everyone I've talked to. but it's just the quantity of reps compared to the other top guys. That's what makes me a little bit squeamish about taking him the top 5 of the draft, at least.
Well, you heard it here. Max Chadwick says that J.J. McCarthy should be Mr. Irrelevant, just like Brock Purdy,
right,
final
exactly.
pick of the NFL draft.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah.
Hey, JJ has long idolized Tom Brady, because I do remember having the conversation with him as a recruit, and he said like his goal is to win more rings than Brady. Whatever Brady finished with, he wanted more. I hope that he isn't wanting to emulate Brady in terms of being what is it, 199 overall, 6th round.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he obviously will not be that. But I was really interested. You guys released a list of 3 players, or actually it wasn't just 3 players, but the underrated players entering the NFL draft, the ones that aren't kind of getting their due diligence from the NFL draft nicks out there. There were 3 Michigan guys on that list. I just want to hear your thoughts about especially Mikey Sam still, who I feel like, it's funny. I feel like there's a lot of people that look at him and say like he should probably be a 1st rounder, if not like at least like a 2nd rounder. And then you got people that are like, if my team takes Mikey Sam still in the first 2 days, I will set myself on fire. But walk us through those guys that are on your list as far as the ones that you feel are underrated, and why you guys are so high on Mikey Sam still in particular.
I think Mikey is just a damn good football player. Actually, my colleague Mitch Kaiser interviewed him a few days ago, and actually the article came out yesterday. If you want to check it out, pff.com. Awesome kid. Dude is just a damn good football player, man. I mean, he played receiver, obviously, to start his career, then switched over to corner, was unbelievably productive this past year. I am in that camp of, I think he's a borderline 1st round pick, and if he's not a 1st round pick, he damn sure better be one of the first picks of the 2nd round, because I think you want to get that kind of guy in your locker room, want to get that kind of guy in your secondary. I think he's in a plug-and-play starter at slot corner in the NFL, which is a very valuable position. I understand some people might say, oh, he's not an outside corner. You still need slot corners, man. With how much 11 personnel that teams are playing right now, you're going to need a slot corner. I mean, really, the base defense is having a slot corner out there. So you better have 5 DBs on the field at almost all times as an NFL defense nowadays. So Mikey Sam still is a plug-and-play starter, I think. And, yeah, he is easily, to me, the best slot corner in this draft. And I would take him early 2nd round. And I do think he's going to end up being a top 40, top 45 pick at the end of the day. I think he will end up in that range. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of his game. There's still some other guys I like too. Chris Jenkins from obviously Michigan, the defensive tackle, really great run defender. You can see where the bloodlines come from. His father was also an unbelievable run defender. I like him a lot. Roman Wilson, the wide receiver, big fan of his game as well. I think he's a really underrated receiver in this draft, where it's a really good receiver draft. I think both those guys would be 2nd round picks. I also think Junior Colson could sneak into the 2nd round too as one of the top linebackers in this draft. It's also just a really good all-around linebacker. So those are some of the other guys I think could be 2nd round picks in the NFL draft right now.
Well, that helps me prepare, since I have to pre-write all of the. It's a little bit different than like, okay, Michigan's got 4 or 5 guys. That's usually the off years. Usually it's more like 8 or 9. Am I going to be writing the most that anyone has ever pre-written for any other team in history? Is that going to happen?
They might have. Let me look through the consensus sport right now. I mean, they might have. Yeah, they could have like over 12 or 13 or even more draft picks. I think the record is 15, which was set by Georgia a couple years ago. Michigan's going to come really close, if not surpass it or tie it, honestly. So yeah, you're gonna have to write up a lot, because there are going to be a lot of Michigan players. Obviously, I think the only 1st round one would be J.J. McCarthy, but there are going to be a lot of guys day 2, and then there are going to be even more guys in day 3. I think there will be a ton of guys taken in the 2024 NFL draft from the reigning national champs.
That's Max Chadwick from PFF. Again, check out his work. I aggregate him constantly on Wolverines Wire. We've brought him up. We brought him on the show, obviously, before. We've brought him up a lot on the show as well. PFF is absolutely phenomenal. And check out the PFF College Football Podcast, which he is the co-host of as well. Max, thanks for sticking with us for an entire show, especially with the meandering thoughts of the Locked On Wolverines show and how we kind of do things around here.
Dude, absolutely, man. I'm sorry I couldn't guarantee another national title this year, but I still think it'd be a great year for Michigan. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always a great time.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everyone out there. We will be back on Wednesday. Peace.